All right, folks, welcome to the Taking the Lid Off podcast. Today I've got with me Cecilia Crafts, and we're going to talk about some mental skills and as it relates to transitioning veterans, how it can help you out. We're going to talk about our background together. We worked together at the Special Warfare Center there at Fort Bragg, where she still is. But I'll let her tell you a little bit about that. So, CC, welcome and tell us a little bit about you.
Chad, thank you so much for having me on. This is exciting. So I was born and raised in Berkeley, California, which is probably only worth throwing out there because that's just very weird to then come work for the Army for a long time. My background is in applied sports psychology and physiology. So how do you make people bigger, stronger, better, faster from a mental and physiological side? I really specialized in the mental side and I'm a certified mental performance consultant, so CMPC. Um, Probably important things to know from 2008 2014. I worked within the special ops population on mental performance training, and then got to go work for the Cleveland Indians for 6 years, and really enjoyed working with the major league staff and players there. It was a phenomenal experience, and miss North Carolina, miss soldiers. Got married, wanted to come home, not be on the road so much, and so back in North Carolina on Fort Bragg, again getting to work with soldiers on the mental performance side here. So that's kind of the
Awesome.
quick bio.
Awesome, awesome. So like I said, we worked together at the Special Warfare Center, where I was an instructor, and through the ranks there up to first sergeant, and then CC was there with at the time y'all were called SOSEP, right? So Special Operations Center for Enhanced Performance, but it's not that anymore, right?
It's kept the acronym, so it's still SOSEP, but it's a Special Operations Cognitive Enhancement Performance Program.
Ah, okay, all right. We love our acronyms and
Yes.
changing them, and yeah, yeah. So and it was fun, and it's one of the highlights. I mean, if you listen to my podcast, watch my podcast, however you consume it, you'll see like I keep bringing people back from my time at the Special Warfare Center because I got to be around so many great people like CC who were fun not only as people but to learn from as well. And it was funny how we worked together. So we would basically at the Special Warfare Center, we're evaluating soldiers that are trying to be future special operators, however you want to put it. And in our evaluation, we're using sports psychologists and whatnot, and psychologists and some other folks to help us with that process. And it was funny how we would learn. We would also, as instructors, would also learn from you all as you evaluate people, and then we would end up using the same language that you all use, and maybe a time or two stole your job from you. We might say,
When you know you're doing it right.
yeah, yeah. So it would and to kind of to paint the picture for folks, what I'm talking about is, we would be in a setup meeting or engagement for a team, and we would evaluate them afterwards, and we give them feedback, right? And because we've heard these folks that work with us speak so much, it just enters our brain, and we give the feedback that we've heard them give because we see the same cues. And so then I'd turn to say CC and be like, CC, you got anything? And I would have covered it already. And I get the look because CC likes to give you a look. And it was great. It was good times, and it was funny. But the point was, we were learning so much from you all, and I enjoyed that immensely.
Well, I think one of the pieces that made it really enjoyable from our side on the mental performance side is, getting to try to work with the soldiers in the course to teach them those skills. But then with you all, especially, with the tactical knowledge you had, strategical knowledge, experience you had, that's not something our staff has. And so your debrief using our language and your tactical knowledge is 20 times what I can give. And so you may have stolen our thunder from time to time, but it probably was 20,000 times better for the students to hear it from you than it was from me. So I think that that was kind of a cool honor and privilege of like when you guys started picking up our language, we knew it made some sense. We knew it had validity. You guys were the ultimate test. And I mean, I think in some ways, if we can work our way out of a job where every instructor can brief our stuff, give feedback on our stuff, and help the students. It's probably the best sign of a job well done, and the biggest honor we can have. So that was always cool.
Yeah, well, it was kind of the ultimate complementing relationship because we learned it all from you, then we would spill it out. So we're giving the same feedback with the background, whereas you all don't have the background in the tactical side, like you said. So some of those students may look at you all and think, well, what does she know? You know.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so, but it allows us to give it and then go, well, I learned it from her, so you need to listen. And that was one of the challenges I remember too. With you all would come to the classroom, right, and give classes, and students, it was hard to grasp. The concepts were hard to grasp for some people, and
Yep.
they didn't always pick up on that very easily. And so, but when it came time to put it into action, so we're talking about a 3-month course with a lot of classroom instruction and then field time and the culmination exercise towards the end. When we got to that culmination exercise, that's when people would be like, "Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now I see the validity of these skills that these people are trying to teach us."
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's always hard. With physical training, we can see changes or benefits. We can count reps. And so even while physical training is really hard, we tend to keep doing it. And I actually say that lightly because it's hard to even get someone to physically train, right? To keep the motivation to do that day in and day out, that's still hard. Um, but at least we can see the outcomes. On the mental side, I think a huge uphill battle we face is it's harder to see those outcomes until we're under high pressure, really need to perform, or heavily multitasking, or doing something that really calls on those physical domains to perform. And then we either kind of start to realize, wow, I've been training this or I haven't. So it's a little bit like never physically training and then running a marathon. It hits when you try to run the marathon or a strongman competition. It hits when you try to lift up a keg and you haven't been doing any weight training. Um, but people don't always go back and think I should be training the mental side. And I think a lot of people don't know how to train the mental side. And so I think that was one of the neat challenges for us coming into SWIC was how do we help soldiers think about how to train that mental side, make that feel more tangible. And I'll be honest, I think we always kind of kicked ourselves that it didn't resonate completely till the end. I think that's one of our major missions is like, how do we help um, women and men realize earlier, hey, I can do this, this is important, this is tangible, and it's something I need to be thinking about working on in training the same way you would as getting in the gym every day.
Right. Yeah. So to back up for a second, the stuff, and I've actually got these slides right here. I know I sent you a message the other day with a picture of this for the YouTube watchers. I've got a set of slides that I still had and some stuff where we got a briefing from CC and her folks. And so it's got the competencies and some of the things that they help me with. And I'm going to read these, CC, and then you kind of back me up if these are correct and kind of what we were going for there. They were helping us with learning enhancement, which would include memory, time management, study strategy, effectiveness, and test preparation. And when we're talking about learning enhancement, we're talking about these guys are trying to become special operators, and they are learning some pretty serious level planning stuff, different languages. I mean, some really some heavy stuff. So some of that stuff is really needed to help some folks out. And then performance enhancement skills were things like mental skill foundations, effective thinking, attention control, energy management, goal setting, integrating imagery, and then team dynamics. Does that kind of sum up what y'all were teaching us more or less?
Yeah, definitely at that point. Yeah, and it's only grown as the field of mental performance has grown. But yeah, that sums it up.
So so when we talk mental skill foundations, can you explain that?
Yeah, and I think that's an area that's even grown a lot recently. When you think about your mindset coming into anything, like even if you think about your mindset coming into deciding to listen to this right here, this podcast, um, you were open, you were not so open, you saw there was going to be a female guest, maybe a civilian. our mindset going into stuff dictates a huge amount. If you have a kid in school, you probably heard about growth or fixed mindset. It's worth checking that out. So your beliefs on like what you can achieve, how you can achieve, how much effort you should put in, what it's going to take to get there, that's all foundational to performance. And it's something you actually have control over. Um, and we've all known times where we've gone into a situation where our mindset has been poor to begin with and the outcome's been poor. Sometimes we realize that we should have had a better mindset. Sometimes we blame the situation. But I think we don't always think about it as that first piece we have to leverage, right? And again, if we go back to the physical stuff, we know if we eat crappy and if we don't sleep at all, we know we're going to have a crappy lift. And we usually can come back and say, hey, there's some things I should be doing to make sure I have a better physical workout. But on the mental side, sometimes we got to start at that foundation. What is it like to actually set the mindset for performance and give yourself the best chance to achieve where you want to get to?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the stuff that you all taught, I mean, it was invaluable. It was just being able to digest it. And so one of the other things I want you to and that was a lot of stuff there, but one of the other things I want you to talk a little bit about is imagery, because imagery to me is such a big deal. You can use imagery in anything, and I know professional athletes use it.
Mm,
The first time I was really introduced to imagery was shooting and shooting sports, and like Mike Seeklander, some other high level shooting guys that use imagery, seeing a stage in their mind before they actually shoot it, that kind of thing. And you all take that and bring it to the tactical level. So talk just a little explanation of imagery for the listener.
sure. So our minds are pretty amazing. And if you can do vivid imagery, if you can create clear images in your mind, your body actually can't tell the difference. So if you've ever woken up from a nightmare or a great dream, and your body is fully reacting, let's say it's a nightmare, and you wake up with your heart pounding, totally vigilant, ready to clear the room, your body hasn't recognized the difference between the image in your mind and reality. And so imagery is this amazing tool we have where we can literally get reps on stuff, or control our physiology just by creating these images. Um, it can be anything from creating relaxation, creating confidence, getting a rep on a stage for shooting before, especially if you're limited in the amount of reps you can do, or if you're not allowed to work through a stage. Um, it's and I can't tell you in professional sport with baseball players, a huge amount of the players actually had guided imagery where we had done recordings of different pieces to help with everything from confident to where their attention was at to how they reset after a tough moment to getting prepped to go hit. So it just has a lot of amazing uses, and it's leveraging part of the way that your brain is built to work, and it yeah can do so much for you.
Yeah, so I think imagery is one of those things that is universal too, because to me, you could use it. Like if I'm talking to a veteran that's transitioning, I'm going to tell them that they can use imagery for things like an interview, for a job interview. See yourself there. Now, granted, you may not know exactly what the setting is going to be like when you do that interview, but you can still do some sort of imagery, some sort of mental training to prepare for those kinds of things, for any of that stuff. Wouldn't you say? Or let's kind of clarify that. Do you need to see where you're actually going to be to do mental imagery?
No, so I'm gonna butcher something and you can help clean it up and we'll work like the team we used to be here. Battle drills, right? You guys
Right,
practice the hell out of them, right?
right.
How many times in combat does anything ever go exactly like the battle drill?
Pretty much never.
Okay, and have you ever done that battle drill in the actual location you're gonna need to do it?
Yeah, nope, nope.
Okay. So battle drills are a weird form of imagery, right? It's getting your body and your mind used to um, variations of things that might happen and some appropriate responses. And that's imagery for an interview. You may not know the room you're in. You may not even know what your interviewer looks like. You may not know what questions they're going to ask. But if you do some drills around that, where you put yourself into imagining how you want to walk into that room, how you want to portray yourself, uh, taking a breath before you answer a question, thinking through how you want to answer questions. Um, thinking about the confidence you want to have or what stories you might want to tell or convey. Those are all great things that you can do. Um, the interview may not go exactly as your images did, um, but just like battle drills can help prep for things in the future, I think imagery can help you get closer and give you some variations so that you have some more familiar moments during that interview.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Did
that
I
makes
totally butcher
perfect
that?
sense.
Is that a working?
Oh, that was great. I actually don't really have anything to clean that up. I mean, it was yeah. I mean, you're right though. It's you don't always, and that's kind of what I wanted to get out of you. I didn't expect you to explain it that way, but that was I mean that was perfect. You know, you're not always going to know exactly where you're going to be, but you can still use some imagery to get yourself ready for those circumstances that you may encounter. The other thing would be energy management. So talk a little about energy management. That's another one I want to hit.
So there's so much we could cover in that. I mean, it's such a big area, but the bottom line is, we as human beings have a lot of stories and myths we've told about stress, and we always talk about it as a negative, and it's probably not. The body is really equipped to handle small periods of stress, and we do incredibly well underneath them. We also have sometimes where we end up in chronic stress, and that's where we end up in probably more issues. But one of the things to realize is that we, as kind of a human system, have kind of a gas pedal and an activation pedal that works, and then we also have a brake pedal. Some of us forget that we have the brake pedal and we don't use it very often, or like it's kind of like our version of first gear, and we just don't like to spend any time in first gear. Um, but it's equally important. Um, and so we'll talk a little bit about understanding how do we activate, how do we perform under stress, what are ways to help you perform under stress. Um, but one of the things I've seen, especially with really high achievers or type A's or professional athletes, is they're actually really good at that gas pedal. They're good at performing under stress. The area they actually might struggle more with is how to use that gas or that brake pedal, when to use it, and the ability to kind of relax and come down, and make sure they're balancing out that system, because that's part of what allows you to refuel for the next time you want to press the gas.
The brake pedal. I struggle with the brake pedal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us do. And I always joke that like if the last time you sat at a stoplight, you picked up your phone to check it because you couldn't handle sitting at a stoplight for 30 seconds without looking at your phone, you probably have some brake work to do, because it would start to suggest that you can't just sit for 30 seconds without something to do. You need some sort of gas pedal, and you're using that phone as a new stimulus when you don't have one from driving. And I think a lot of us have that happen, but I think it's also a pretty good like check engine light of you might want to spend some time on your brake pedal.
Yeah, I've got to work on the brake pedal thing because I'm that guy that everybody's talking about the TV shows and movies they've watched and all this. And yeah, I've caught up on Netflix and yada. I don't even have Netflix because I don't sit still long enough to watch TV shows or anything. I know I'll probably drive my wife nuts at times, going full steam on projects or whatever. So the brake pedal is definitely, and you're right. Yeah, and that's why I struggle with reading as well. I love to learn, but reading is a struggle too because I can't. I sit still and I'm reading. I'm like, huh, gotta do something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I like listening to podcasts, but I will oftentimes work out or walk the dog or do something else while listening to a podcast. The idea of sitting and just listening to a podcast can be rough, but it's a practice skill. And I think we oftentimes forget, there was a time before cell phones were dinging and pinging and our emails were coming in on our cell phones and the world could find you anywhere. And we were okay. Like we were actually wherever our feet were. If we were off hanging out with friends, if we had gone to the beach, nobody could reach you, and you were okay with that. And you didn't have to Google things, and you didn't have to have the right answer in that moment. We've lost some of our ability to be where our feet are, and it's not healthy, right? We need to find those parts. So some people get it, hunting or camping or getting out there. But even I'd ask the people that hunt, how often is a ding or a ping or a vibration on your phone, on your watch, taking you out of where you are can you just spend a day being out there? Because there's all kinds of crazy research about how good nature is for us, how important it is even to see something green. Um, but so that's my rant on the brake pedal matters, and turn off your phone sometimes.
Yeah, I think nature is huge, and for transitioning vets, I think nature could be the cure all for a lot of things. I mean, I feel that way. That's my opinion. Maybe it wouldn't be for just everybody, but I think it's huge because I know it is for me. Like I moved over here near the Smoky Mountains and it's absolutely wonderful out there. And part of the reason I knew it'd be good is because we used to come over here, visiting or we'd get a cabin up in the mountains or whatever. And I always felt better out there. So and I've always loved being outside, so there's that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no, I couldn't
huge.
agree with you more.
Yeah. So some of the other things, so what are y'all kind of transitioning to? I know is you've been doing this a good while now. Are there any new things that you all have found that you're teaching now or as far as the enhancement stuff?
Yeah, I think the field is expanded a lot with the ability to do brain imaging, and so what makes a difference in the brain. So I mean, I think big areas of research in like the last 10 years probably are growth and fixed mindset. So growth mindset being the belief that people, if they work at something, will improve. Fixed mindset would be you're born with a set of traits and it is what it is. And I think frankly, especially in a special ops culture, there can be a lot of, hey, I was born to do this. But it doesn't leave a lot of area for growth, and perseverance and working through challenges. And so I think the growth mindset literature is really kind of hit and taken off, and that's a big deal. The field of mindfulness, I know it may sound pink and fuzzy to many people, but that ability to be present. Um, and I think too, like for anyone that has shot competitively, I think I think actually mindfulness is more intuitive, or even forms of meditation are more intuitive than we think, right? Like if you have spent time behind a gun, there can be a rhythm to your shooting. The breath work becomes so important. Body awareness becomes important. Focus becomes important. And those are all part of mindfulness. But what we're finding is, especially in this world where there's so many distractions, that 20 minutes a day of mindfulness or breath work or meditation or some form of these makes a huge difference in how our brain functions and our ability to lock in, perform, and concentrate. And so I think that's a big area of growth. And then, we're seeing the ability of like, eye tracking software is out, and being able to see what people are actually taking in and tracking with their eyes. Um, Systems that can look at heart rate variability and talk to us about what's happening with stress over time, or how we're reacting to situations. So I think the text picked up to show us a lot of what's happening on the inside of what we've kind of thought or talked about from a mental side. Um, but those areas have kind of really exploded, probably a lot in response to how many stimuluses have also grown over the last 10 years.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much. Oh gosh, there's so much stimulus out there. It makes it difficult,
Yeah.
so to back up quickly, so growth versus fixed mindset, Carol Dweck, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so Carol Dweck's book, and the book is the book title just growth versus fixed? What's the title of that book? Do you
It's
remember?
mindset. Yep.
Mindset.
It's mindset.
Yeah, yeah. So for the listeners, Mindset by Carol Dweck. Look it up on Amazon or whatever. Great book. I've read it, and it's super valuable. And CC already explained it, so I won't again. But that's something that's huge. And if you're stuck in that fixed mindset, it's only going to hurt you, in my opinion. But I don't know. Some people are that way, and I think it's okay for some people. Different folks, different strokes.
Yeah, I would tell you though, like especially if you're transitioning, one of the places where I feel like mindset's so big is you're gonna try stuff you haven't done before, and the first time you do it, it may or may not go well. And if the first time you're not good at it, and that means that you suck or will never be good at it, or clearly you weren't born to do this, it really stops you from being able to try different stuff. And I think sometimes we forget, especially when we've been good at stuff for a long time. You know, if you've had a 10-year military career, 20-year military career, probably were pretty good at what you were doing, and then transitioning into this whole other world, it's kind of, you know, it's like learning to walk again. And we're lucky when we're babies and learning to walk, we don't have much of an ego about it. But as we get older, I think, you know, we do get an ego about not being good at stuff and how uncomfortable that is. And so if we can kind of pick up that growth mindset of, hey, you know, I'm going to have to put the work in on this, or this is going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. I don't have to be perfect at it the first time. That mindset really can lead to a lot more happiness, and maybe getting into a field that's hard for you at first, but that you end up loving because it's truly what you're passionate about. I am dyslexic beyond belief, um, but you know, I had to do a lot of reading to get through grad school. I do not read. I'm not the fastest reader, um, but and it's taken me a lot of work. So I'm happy that I didn't quit early, because it didn't come easy.
Yeah, especially when you're talking transition veterans like that, you absolutely have to have a growth mindset. Like,
Right?
I mean, unless you're gonna get out of the military and just be retired, like if you're retiring and you're just gonna be retired, then okay. But even still, I mean, so anyway, I won't beat that dead horse. But mindset by Carol Dweck, go pick it up, read it. I actually didn't read the whole book. It was one of those books where I think it's awesome, but it's one of those books where I got about 2/3 of it and was like, okay, I got it.
She's got different chapters. She's got one I think on parenting, one on performance, maybe even one on academics. But I think it is one of those books where our scouts read it for the Cleveland Indians, and I had them read the first 100 pages because that really explains mindset. And then kind of said if there's chapters that interest you, if you want to read the parenting chapter because you're a parent, please have at it. But yes, I would agree with you. You can get the concept probably in the first 100 pages pretty easy, and what you read after that is kind of what most applies for you.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I kind of suck at reading, so
I'm with.
that was part of it. Um, but so you mentioned breathing too, and breathing, we called it tactical breathing. Are you still calling it tactical breathing?
Yeah, or deliberate breathing. Sure,
Yeah,
lots of different names for it.
yeah. So breathing is huge, and I won't go crazy into it, but diaphragmatic breathing in the system that, if you listen to the podcast, you've heard me talk about my book, Original Strength for the Tactical Athlete, and then the Original Strength System with my buddy Tim Anderson. That's huge. Breathing is huge, and it applies in so many facets of life. I've got my little Apple Watch that lets me know when I need to breathe, and I it's annoying sometimes, but I leave that feature turned on because it helps remind me, and I think, okay, breathe. But it helps relax you, it helps calms you, and then there's all the things in the body that it does as well. And so it was always interesting to me that it's something we were using in fitness. You all were teaching it, so we're talking about teaching it for people doing everything from negotiations to
Mhm.
getting ready to go in the shoot house, all those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, breath's the cheapest thing that comes everywhere with you, right? We're doing it anyway, and so I love it because I mean, you're never going to leave it behind, and the power that it has. So it, you know, to geek out, like it's both something that you can control, right? Like you can hold your breath right now, but it's also something that you will do automatically, and so it actually is part of two different systems in the body, and it's this kind of gateway between these different systems in the body. So people sometimes used to say like, "Well, I can control my heart rate." Well, so to get picky, you can't, but you can control your breath, which controls your heart rate. So when we choose to kind of deliberately breathe or tactically breathe, we're getting some control over things that we normally can't control. And it just, yeah, has all kinds of benefits for us. Just remembering to breathe, especially in those breathe before you answer an interview question, breathe in a tough moment when your anger is rising, spend 5 minutes and just let yourself focus on your breath. Um, it will be hard for you at first, um, and that's okay. But think about how good it is for you when you spend a day fishing, hunting, when you just eat a meal without your phone distracting you, that time to focus on something simple. Your breath can always be that thing. Is
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, because breathing is something you have to train as well, or you don't have to, but it's good to train as well because there's the difference in breathing into your chest or breathing using your diaphragm, and breathing into your chest they typically say is kind of it triggers that fight or flight response, right? Versus breathing into your diaphragm is kind of your rest and digest mode, or however
Yeah.
you want to say it.
Simple way to think about it is if someone startles you, you're going to kind of do that and you're going to see that chest breath go, right? And if you in the morning wake up and put a hand on your belly, you'll notice that your belly is moving in and out, right? It should be puffing out as you breathe in and coming in as you breathe out. If you watch a baby sleep or your dog sleep, you're going to see the same thing. They're breathing all the way into that belly. And so taking that deep breath that goes all the way down, pushes that belly out, that good diaphragmatic breath, can have a lot of impacts.
Yeah, we teach it in original strength. Well, actually, you can take and put your hand on your belly or put an object like your shoe or something on your belly and make sure you're pushing that object up and down. And it's got so many benefits from the mental side, but then also I've seen people lay on the ground, that people with a shoulder impingement or some
Oh
kind of
yeah.
shoulder mobility issue lay on the ground, breathe steady into their diaphragm for a few minutes, get up, and now their shoulder moves better.
Oh
So,
yeah. It's crazy, and you're gonna find your PT uses it for stuff like PRI, like medically, people use it all the time. We use it. Strength coaches are gonna use it. I think you're gonna find it everywhere because breath matters.
right, right. So have a breath mint and breathe deep.
Yes, breath mint's nice for anyone you're working with.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about what you've got going on now with your new project. I've been seeing you on YouTube a little bit, so tell me about that.
Yeah, so starting, I guess, working for the army the first time, I spent a lot of time down on Camp McCall in the woods, and I found it was pretty amazing to watch what happened when people were moving through the woods, if they were practicing patrols or doing land navigation. And it just really struck me as, literally people were trying to get from point A to point B, and then metaphorically they had to kind of mentally get themselves to point A to point B. And so when I was then working in baseball years later, one of the things I was realizing is we had these incredibly high performing athletes, that if things weren't going well on a baseball field, um, they struggled to know who they were outside of that, or how they were going to work through that, or how they were going to perform. And it was really hard on a baseball field for them to learn that lesson because their paycheck depended on it and their career depended on it. And failure could get them released, and that could be the end of their pro career. And so we actually got this cool opportunity to bring 6 minor league guys, um, from the Cleveland Indians down to, south of Camp McCall, and run a land navigation program. And a couple, um, guys from the Army and Special Ops community come out and teach, land nav, map, compass, protractor, how to shoot azimuths, all that good stuff, up on a good friend's actually goat farm, day one, and get the guys kind of comfortable with that and map reading. Day two, we went out in two different groups and kind of did group led land nav with the different players getting a chance to kind of start to lead more and more, but with a group and an instructor to kind of help them. And by day three, we had them on their own, um, getting from point A to point B, and they'd hit 5 points that day, short distances, just to kind of get a feel for what that was like. Um, Thursday longer distances, and then Friday we threw some fragos in there for them to keep it kind of fun and playful. But built into that was kind of a mental exploration we asked them to do. And that was really think about who they were as a performer and kind of figure out their characteristics as a performer. And then kind of come home every day from these experiences and check back in with those 5 traits and think about, were they still that person as they hit an obstacle? Were they still that person as they learned? Were they still that person as they were performing well? Like, what was happening for them between point A and point B, and who were they really as a performer? And it was just amazing to watch. Nobody was with them on the land nav. We had GPSs on them to make sure we didn't lose baseball players, but no one was walking with them by day three. And so it was their self-report. It was their own experiences. Um, but I think any soldier can probably talk about, like, mentally what happens between one point and another. there's self-talk, there's confidence questions, um, there's a lot that occurs in that space. And there's a lot that occurs when you think you might be lost. Do you panic? Do you sit down and cry? Do you go back and retrace your last point? Do you keep moving forward because that's your style and assume that you'll figure it out? Um, these are all things that our guys got a snapshot of experiencing. So it's called the All Terrain Project, allterrainproject.com, or Project Terrain on Twitter, at Project Terrain. And I've started kind of building a blog of a lot of the mental stuff we found ourselves talking about that week, and then mental performance in general. And then this summer and fall, we're going to open up some weeks for people to come out and do it. Again, unfortunately, it's probably not the best program for soldiers because you guys all know land nav way too well. Um, but uh, for performers that don't, just having that novel experience of learning a new skill and getting to be put in a performance setting where it doesn't matter if you're crappy at land nav, but you kind of get to experience performing again, being nervous, being between point A and point B, I think can be really powerful for people.
I would disagree with you on all soldiers knowing land nav. Um, there's a lot that don't, and there's a certain category of soldier that's particularly bad at land nav, and I don't want to say what group that is, but it rhymes with officer. Don't tell Mike I said that.
Well, not
Um,
well. Then,
but
then you're welcome to come out and do it. But
oh,
Mike's actually one of our instructors.
I'm all about it. I love land nav, and land nav, and you're absolutely right. And we talked about this on the phone, right? But I think it's awesome because land nav can be a great equalizer in a lot of ways. You're right. From point to point, you're on your own, and especially if you think you're lost, it, there can be a moment of panic
Yeah.
if you've got a time hack that you're trying to meet or whatever the case may be. There can be a moment of panic, but you got to have the tools in place to be able to get through that panic, or be able to get through that situation, knowing how to triangulate or whatever it is you need to do. We won't get all technical right now, but whatever it is you need to do to get yourself out of that situation and find your way. But it's huge. And I mean, especially at night. So night land nav across long distances, we're talking where you're, maybe 10, 12 kilometers between points. That's a heck of a thing, especially if you think you're lost in the dark like that. So it can be pretty tough. So I think that's awesome, and I think there's going to be a lot of good benefits, and you're going to get a ton out of that.
I hope so. I think, it's sticking to a process too, which I think sticking to a process and getting to see the outcome of sticking to that process. So I think it was really cool watching the guys on day 3 getting to their first point. uh, you know, we're doing basic stuff, right? So they're counting their steps. They're, doing everything as basic as possible. We're not doing terrain association because some of these guys have never been out in the woods before. Or one of the guys was Hawaii born, one of them was Arizona born. Like this is a totally different terrain for them. Um, so they're working a process, and then to see that process work, right? To arrive in the middle of nowhere with one human being standing there and for it to have worked, what an awesome thing. I mean, to me, that was one of the ways to make the mental side visible and tangible is you followed a process and here you are, you got to the next place. And what did that feel like to follow that process? And then what happens if you deviate off that process or try to speed up that process or think you're too good for that process? There's all those things that come. I should say on the allterrain.com blog, there's all kinds of stuff. So if you never are going to come take a land nav course with us because you are one of the guys that are good at it, we do cover all kinds of mental performance tips and components and short videos on there. So hopefully there's something there for everybody.
Yeah, definitely go check it out, and I have those links in the show notes. And there's probably a lot of people that think they're good at land nav, and they're probably really not. It's a perishable skill as well, so something you might challenge yourself with if you've been out of the game for a little bit. But anyhow, so they can find you there if anybody wants to reach out to you, correct?
Yes. Yep, that works.
Yeah, all right, CC. Well, we've put some good stuff out there. Hopefully, I think, and hopefully there's some stuff that people can take away from this. You got anything else? Any closing thoughts?
No, just I mean, I challenge you to stop and think about what your mental game is. I think we tend to have patterns in our mental game. You know, that was one of the things we saw with the minor league players is the same obstacles they had on the field showed up at land navigation. Crazy, right? But I think we have patterns in our lives too of how we mentally perform. So if you stop and break down, you know, what is your mindset coming into the daily things you want to do well? What happens when things get tough? What happens to your mindset when you need to learn something new? What happens to your perseverance? All those components, um, you can work on those. You know, those are not just who you are; those are all assets to work on. And Chad, I think as an instructor at SWIC, you were one of those guys that really helped the students consider what were they doing and bring self-awareness there, and then also areas that they could change or try to work and adapt to. And you guys designed some amazing training to facilitate that adaptation or evolution for a student.
Yeah, it was a super fun time, probably the greatest time of my career. I had a lot of fun and got to work with a lot of great people like yourself and the other psychologists as well. But I appreciate you coming on, CC, and these are skills that I think everybody can take away, especially in the time we're in right now with the old coronavirus and whatnot. So go check out alltrainingproject.com. There's some stuff on there you can definitely use. Specifically, go look at is it the 3 foot rule?
Yeah, 3 foot world.
3 foot world. Yeah, look at the 3 foot world video. We're not going to talk about it here, but I want you to go check it out and see. Definitely some stuff on there you can use. So thanks for coming on, CC. I appreciate you giving me some of your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Chad.
All right, everybody, take care.